Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we're discussing my thoughts on episode 12 of the anime series Sora, Yori, mo Tooi Basho, or A Place Further Than the Universe. And this was a really somber episode toward the end, and really all throughout. And it kind of threw me for a loop a little bit because I had completely forgotten at this point, going into this episode, how many episodes were meant to carry out the series. You know, the entire time I'm watching this, I'm kind of like begging the question the whole way through: is this the finale? This the finale? You know, I wasn't sure. I was completely unaware until after going onto my anime list after watching it to update my watch list that, thankfully there is one more episode left, because this one ended on a totally somber down note. I mean, I was teary-eyed and everything like that right there with the girls. Shirase's finally, you know, sort of reasoning out for herself that I don't know what I'm going to actually find. I've been here in Antarctica for a little while now, and I really still haven't found whatever it is I thought I was looking for. You know, some semblance of closure, something like that. Some leveling of the playing field, some sort of answer to that void that has been a part of her life for so long now. And she's begun to realize, you know, if I've been here this long and there's been nothing to really answer to that, nothing to really trigger that sense of closure, even my relationships with my friends and with Toto, the former friend of my mother and my surrogate sort of caregiver, in a sense, at least while, you know, her mother was still alive. What's going to help me? What's going to bring that about? Maybe I'm going to be lost forever. And it really sort of hangs over their heads because they are going to that last stage where effectively her mother was lost. They're you know, trying to build up the station, the survey station, and she's really mulling it over. Do I want to go that far? Because maybe I get there and I don't find anything. Maybe I don't get the closure. Well, then what's all this been worth? I'll just live the rest of my life sort of poking around in the dark, you know, feeling around and never being able to find purchase for that void, for that absence, you know, all that kind of stuff. And you know, as I say, that was the somber undercurrent. You could see that the entire time Shirase was dealing with this. Mari chiefly is the one who's kind of like the go-getter, you know, cheerleader to an effect of wanting to reach her and get her to talk about it, figure it out. What can I do to help you, my good friend? And, you know, she's grateful that she went on this journey. She's grateful she was provoked to it by Shirase, and she really wants to answer to that. And it's not like the other girls don't. You know, Miyake and Yuzuki both, I'm sure they have, you know, concerns for Shirase and everything, but I think they're a little bit more practical about it. Like, well, there's only so much we can actually do to help her. You know, we can't just cross our arms, blink our eyes, and her mother's back all of a sudden, you know. We're here, we're making the best of it, and what else can we really do? And of course, Mari being the go-getter, she doesn't want to let it lie. She kind of gets herself into trouble a little bit. You know, having to be scolded by Miyake and Yuzuki respectively for just sort of, you know, devil may care opening that wound for Shirase. Well, what are you going to do? You're here to find your mother. Why aren't you more, you know, boisterous? Why aren't you more excited, chomping at the bit to go to this last stage? Why do you have to consider it? And, you know, it's like the second time in the last week that I call back to Star Trek, the original series. I'm a big-time Trekkie, lifelong, passed down to me by my dad. And there was an episode of the original series, you can see the poster of all the characters back here, where Mr. Spock ends up, you know, sharing this Vulcan, I guess it is proverb, I don't remember how they referred to it in the actual episode, Amok Time. But effectively he says to a sort of pseudo-rival, you know, that you may find having is not so pleasing a thing as wanting. And that really speaks to the mindset that Shirase's in. For the longest time, she's held this void. She's had that absence. And she's lived with it for so long that if there's no putting a cap on the bottle, you know, on the one hand, it's like, well, I've lived with it for so long, I don't want to lose it. for a lack of my mother being in my life, being manifest, being physically here, that void has now become a part of her life. So I don't want to lose that. But at the same time, that's why I'm here. that's what I've come so far for, to find something to fill that void, to finally close it off and be able to move on with my life. So it's the fear of finally casting off those shackles and being able to evolve beyond it, because essentially that means there's no more hope. There's no more drive. There's the end of this. You know, I mean, she conceptualizes it in her mind. She's worked it out. She's an intellectual young woman. She gets it. And even Toto, again, for her part, you know, she's kind of reluctant, but she's still the adventurous spirit. She's still going to go to that nth degree, but she's not going to tell Shirase she should go. She wants it to be on Shirase's shoulders. You know, she wants the decision to be made by her. And of course, we see Shirase makes the decision to go ahead. I mean, all the girls are going to go anyway, and you know, so why not? I packed my backpack and let's go. And I mean, the entire journey there via the snowcats. I mean, first they take the chopper, the helicopter, and that gets them so far, but then they have the snowcats and they're bringing supplies and all this kind of stuff, and it's a very slow going journey. They have to stop overnight because the blizzard kicks up something awful, something fierce. And I realized in that moment, if I were there, I would be terrified, you know, especially with the sort of albatross overhanging them all, the loss of Shirase's mother 3 years hence in this same weather. For a couple minutes there, I was afraid Shirase was going to look for her opportunity and she was going to just leap out of that snowcat into the blizzard. And, you know, in sort of a last-ditch effort, Toto again was going to run out behind her and just happen to grab her before she got lost. Thankfully, they did not. Thankfully, I was relieved that they didn't. But when finally they get to that last stage of their journey, there's still no satisfaction for Shirase. She still has no motivation because she is, you know, beholden to that fear, that reluctance to close things off once and for all. But there has to be something for Mari, for, you know, Yuzuki, for Miyake. They collectively realize there has to be something. It's been 3 years. Nobody has been here since she was here. You came all this way. There has to be some last vestige to answer to your want, to complete your journey. And they desperately start flinging things all over the place, going through boxes, everything like that. And I'm like, what are they going to find? I mean, I had the briefest, you know, sort of passing, you know, curiosity. Are they going to find her body? Like, you know, I mean, even though they are indoors, you know, they're not out in the elements and everything like that. Surely she's skeletal remains or something, frozen, or maybe just her flesh body frozen out in the snow somewhere. And I was really fearful along those lines too. Like, I hope that's not where we're going. You know, I really hope we don't need actual legitimate, you know, proof that she was here, because she's still here. You know, and I was relieved when they found what I thought at first was just like a portrait, like a picture frame. I didn't realize at first it was a laptop. And as they're showing it and they wipe off the snow and you see the picture, and then you see like a line around the edge, I'm like, okay, is it a laptop? It's not a picture frame. You know, what is it? And of course, Shirase comes up to her friends who have found it and they give it to her. And she goes off. They give her the space she needs. That was my favorite line about there being real, true best friends, because they can give each other the room, the space they need, the space Shirase needed. They weren't going to force her hand. They weren't going to make the decision for her, much like Toto again. Let it rest on her shoulders. Let her come to it naturally. And she did. And she plugged it in. You know, I'm surprised the damn thing still worked. You know, I have enough trouble keeping my smartphone and my laptop working. And, you know, they're only a few years old too, and not in the icy tundra. So, you know, but she plugs it in, battery pack and all, and she gets it working. And I didn't know what to expect. I mean, you know, the sort of cliche would be, oh, there's like one last video that her mother left behind in case she were to find it or something. And that may still happen. There is still an episode left. But what really kicks it off for her is opening up the email sort of browser, the email window, and those thousands of emails that she sent. And I don't know, because you see her in a flashback cradling like a phone, and there's a message that's blank. So I don't know if all of those emails were blanks, if some of them were blanks, if most of them had messages that she was sending trying to reach her mother. But it's her entire 3-year history without her mother, encapsulated in thousands of rushing, oncoming messages. And that is the trigger. That's the other leg dropping for her, giving her that closure she wasn't sure if she could handle, or if she even wanted at this point. And it's at that point where I'm like, you know, there's no OP, there's no ED. It's the credits are going over what's happening, the opening of the episode and this ending sequence. And because I'm not sure, is this the finale? I'm like, wow, what a bittersweet way to go out. She kind of got the closure, but she's crying her eyes out. The other 3 girls are outside the room, bawling their eyes out. I'm teary-eyed. I'm like, oh my God. And I watched it to the very end. I'm looking at the seconds. I'm like, just one last thing. Have Toto again come in and hug her. Do something positive, something to lift me up a little bit. And it never came. And what a perfect soliloquy, in a sense. An unironic soliloquy in the fact that reprieve never came because Shirase's mother never returned. And here was the closure. Here was the end cap. The end game of that for her. The cruel, crushing realization, once and for all, truly answering to that long, you know, staved off resignation, that her mother was well and truly gone. And here it was. You know, oh man, talk about heavy. And I was just, I clapped my hands when I went onto my anime list, and I'm like, oh my God, thank goodness there is a 13th episode. Thank God that's not where it ends. Holy hell, I would have been depressed for the next, 2-3 days till my next review. So yeah, it was a somber, heavy-weighted episode. And it did really kind of answer to what I've said all along, that is the end game, you know. I was a little, almost borderlining dissatisfied with her reflection on, you know, she's like sending a message to her mother, or she's composing one in her head about her friends, the friends that she's made, where she thought she was going to be alone in the world forever. But I've gained friends. They all came with me on this journey, this you know, sort of adventure seeking you. My mom, they supported me. They're my friends. They're here with me now. And I had speculated and spoken about in a previous episode discussion video that I thought Toto Gin was going to pick up there, you know. But that was my kind of forgetting the fact that, well, these 4 girls, they are the center of this story. So when I equated that again for myself, it was like, okay, that makes sense. But then, of course, like I said, they find the laptop, everyone's bawling, I'm practically bawling, and it was such a somber down note, that it was just like, I was just so relieved that there's still an episode left. And so I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below if you had any of the same trouble I did, where I was very forgetful that, oh, there is another episode. Was this the finale? Was it not? You know, what did you think of the emotional sort of uncertainty at the beginning and a little bit peppered all throughout, then a little bit more livelier aspect? They're playing cards in the snow cat and they're excited by that, taking that last vestige, you know, part of the journey, and then answering to all of that with a real down note, a real somber down note by the end of it. You know, did it impact you as much as it impacted me? Were you as frustrated that it kind of tapered off on such a depressive note? And are you then also relieved, like I am, that there is still an episode left and hopefully they will pick it up again? You know, but yeah, I mean, love it or hate it, anything goes in the comments below. Just love having that conversation. And if you didn't find it satisfying, if you didn't find it as emotional, all that good stuff, let me know that in the comments below. Otherwise, you know, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well. Thank God there's one last episode. I'll catch you all later. Peace.